Welcome back to Quick Films. Today, I'm going to explain an American horror slasher film called The Collection, released in the year 2012. Spoilers ahead, like the video and subscribe. The movie begins with a girl named Elena and her father returning from her mother's funeral in a car. While the father consoles her daughter and promises to be around her as much as he can, they have an accident. In the following scene, we see a series of television broadcasts throughout every channel about a serial killer named the Collector. He is known for kidnapping and killing the victims. However, it appears that he takes one victim from each crime scene and keeps them alive for some reasons that are still unknown. Although the police have begun their manhunt for the killer, they are still not able to track his moves because of his random murder patterns. The record shows that 50 people are missing at the moment. According to the media, the last missing person is Arkin, who is thought to be still alive. Elsewhere, it is shown that Elena is now a grown-up lady. Although she survived the accident, she injured her ear and wears a hearing aid now. Meanwhile, she gets a call from her boyfriend, who bails on her on their date night. However, she doesn't complain since her boyfriend excused himself, saying he's busy at work. Later, Elena's friends, Missy and Josh, arrive outside her house and call her to join them for a party at the club. Although she refuses initially, she decides to go to the club after she sees her friends waiting outside in a car to pick her up. Since Elena's father is already asleep, she doesn't disturb him and walks out of the house to join her friends. Soon, they drive her to an underground club. They can only enter inside after telling a password to a weird doorman. Inside the club, Elena starts to groove and enjoy the party with her friends. Shockingly, she sees her boyfriend making out with another girl. Enraged, she punches him on the face and leaves the crowded dance floor. Meanwhile, the Collector has been watching all this from above the dance floor. A disturbed Elena walks into an isolated room inside the club, where she discovers a red trunk. When she hears a thud from the trunk, she opens it to find a severely injured Arkin, who is covered in blood. As soon as Elena opens the trunk, a steel spear shoots from the wall and initiates a series of deadly traps. Luckily, Arkin grabs Elena and they both dodge the spear. However, the spear activates a large rotating tool with multiple blades in the dance floor, shredding hundreds of people. Scared of Arkin and the spear, Elena runs out of the room despite his request to help him. In the hallway, she unknowingly steps into a wire, causing several swords to fling out of the wall and kill people. Finally, Elena is able to find her friend, Missy, but unfortunately, she is locked in a cage along with several other people by the Collector. The serial killer smashes everyone inside the cage with a metal panel shaft, while Elena watches them in terror. Horrified, Elena runs back to the same isolated room. However, the Collector captures her soon and puts her inside the same red trunk. Before the Collector can catch Arkin, he jumps off the window by taking a body as a shield and landing on a car. Sadly, he breaks his arm, but gathers his courage and strength and flees from the scene. Afterwards, the Collector puts the red trunk with Elena inside of it in a van and drives away. The next scene shows Arkin inside a hospital being treated by the doctors. Later, after coming to consciousness, Arkin is pleased to see his wife Lisa by his side. The two share some emotional moments after a very long time. Arkin thanks Lisa for bringing him a bouquet of roses. However, she mentions it's not her. There's a note with the flower, and Arkin realizes immediately that it's the Collector. Since the Collector mentions that he can't wait to meet Arkin's family, Arkin asks his wife to go to her mother's house as soon as possible and not return back until he informs. Later that evening, a man named Lucello arrives at the hospital to meet Arkin. Turns out Lucello is the right-hand man of Elena's father. When Arkin explains that Elena might still be alive, Lucello asks for his help to find her and take down the serial killer. Since Arkin had been a victim of the Collector and is quite aware about his location, Lucello forces him to join his mission until Elena is found. Lucello has assembled his team of mercenaries to hunt the Collector and kill him. A flashback shows that Elena and her father were saved by Lucello during the car accident several years ago. Back in the present, Elena makes a hole in the trunk and peeks outside. She finds a man chained up in a stretcher bed. The man cries for help, but there's no one except the Collector, who cuts off the victim's tongue, placing it in a jar, and sticks a half-faced mask in his face. Then, the Collector drags the victim away to a different room. Elsewhere, Lucello and his associates plan with Arkin to locate Elena and bring her home alive. When Arkin demands that he will only take them to the Collector's location, but not go inside, Lucello agrees. Previously, when Arkin was inside the trunk and traveled with the collector, he had cut his forearms several times to mark the turns and stops, figuring out the location. Before leaving for the hunt, Arkin warns everyone to bring every weapon they've got and to be careful, because once he catches them, he'll scare the hell out of everyone. Later, using the marks on his forearm, Arkin guides Lucello and his associates to the collector's place, which is an abandoned hotel for several years. Upon showing them the location, Arkin prepares to leave as promised. However, Lucello double-crosses him and forces him at gunpoint to find Elena, as he is well known about the inside of the hotel. Without any option, Arkin guides them inside. One of the associates of Lucello stays outside the hotel to guard the door as ordered by Lucello. In the meantime, Elena uses her bra strap and succeeds in opening the trunk's latch. After stepping outside, she finds another trunk with a dead man inside. The room is an experiment lab, with open corpses as test subjects. Also, there are numerous insects preserved in jars. Although she tries to escape from the room, her efforts are in vain, since the door is locked from the outside. Suddenly, she hears the collector's footsteps and hides behind a shelf full of insect jars. Realizing that Elena is still inside the room, the collector sets free several spiders that crawl over her body and face. Although she's scared, she doesn't make a sound. Meanwhile, a warning alarm is triggered by Arkin and the others, which distracts the collector. When the collector rushes to another room, Elena searches for some ways to escape. Soon, Elena finds a vent shaft in the room and crawls into it to find an exit. Outside the hotel, the collector kills Lucello's associate, who had been guarding the door. In the following scene, Arkin and Lucello's team is attacked by the victims, who are driven insane with drugs by the collector. Those victims have their tongues sliced off and also have a half-face mask stuck to their face. In order to save themselves, the team shoots at those victims. When they are shocked after discovering a pile of corpses, they are again approached by more of those masked and drugged victims. The team manages to kill some of them and runs into a room, locking themselves inside. Since they can't stay there for long, they slowly walk upstairs, walking close to each other. Meanwhile, Elena reaches a room full of makeup and discovers another trunk. When she hears a girl pleading to get out, Elena opens the trunk. A girl named Abby, who has put on full makeup, steps outside of the trunk. She reveals that the collector had put the makeup on her and seems scared to escape from the place. However, Elena convinces her and both of them walk out of the room. Next, we see a half-naked man approaching Lucello and his associates. Initially, he asks for help as one of the victims, but turns out he has been drugged and has a bomb tied to his neck. Shortly, the bomb explodes, killing the victim and initiating 3 spear traps from the ceiling, which executes one of Lucello's associates. Taking the opportunity, Arkin manages to make a narrow escape from Lucello and reaches into a dark room where he is almost caught by the collector, but somehow manages to escape. In the following scene, while Elena and Abby walk in the hallway, Abby starts to act insane and claims herself to be the collector's favorite. She is reluctant to leave the place and slaps Elena. Hearing Abby, the collector arrives at the spot, approaching Elena. However, she manages to run fast, before the collector catches her. Soon, Elena enters a room and hides in a vent. Meanwhile, Arkin finds an elevator shaft full of corpses. When he realizes he is being followed by one of Lucello's associates, he hangs inside the shaft but sadly falls down in the pile of corpses. However, he uses a rope and pulls himself up. Then, he enters a room full of insects stored in jars. Not only that, he finds human corpses and skeletons arranged to resemble insects, displayed in a big glass case. Turns out, the serial killer is an entomologist and performs experiments on humans to reflect them as insects. Inside the room, Arkin also finds a woman nailed in the wall. When the collector arrives nearby, Arkin hides in a corner and watches him slit the woman's throat. After the serial killer leaves, Arkin manages to escape into another room, where he is knocked down by Lucello and his associates. There, the collector attacks them, and succeeds in killing one of the mercenaries and abducting the other named Paz. Before Lucello can shoot the collector, he escapes. Later, Elena finds a room with small ventilation. When she sees 2 men outside, she screams for help. Sadly, they are distant and can't hear her. In the meantime, Abby runs into Lucello and Arkin. In exchange for getting her out of the place, she promises to take them to Elena. On their way, they hear Paz screaming with pain, after the collector cuts her face with a blade initially, and then hangs her in a net full of blades. Lucello follows Paz's sound and reaches an empty place, which turns out to be a trap. The bomb explodes, however Lucello manages to escape in time. On the other hand, Elena succeeds in freeing up Paz. Soon, Abby guides the men to Elena and Paz. Elena is relieved to see Lucello and hugs him. After seeing Abby, Elena claims that she's insane, but Lucello assures that she is a victim and has been helpful to them. Afterwards, Elena takes everyone to the room with the ventilation. Since the men can't hear them, Arkin comes up with an idea and shoots one of the men so they will inform the police. Luckily, the police arrive soon. Arkin fires one more time to get the police's attention, causing them to surround the building. The Collector, who hears the gunshots and finds numerous cops outside in his surveillance camera, picks up his gun and approaches Elena, Arkin, and the others. Meanwhile, Abby betrays everyone and shouts, leading the Collector in the room. When Paz tries to stop Abby, she unknowingly steps on some nails, falling into an iron trap with blades inside, and dies. As a result, the Collector becomes enraged and attacks the group with his 2 dogs and fires at them. Although they miss the gunshots, they are able to kill the dogs. The Collector manages to capture Elena and take her away. Sadly, Lucello is trapped in another iron trap, and he is pinned in the ground. He requests Arkin and Paz to save Elena. The 2 reluctantly agree and leave him. Later, they find Elena strapped to a table. When they untie her, the 3 of them are trapped inside a cage by the Collector. The Collector makes it apparent by displaying and flashing a lighter that he is going to burn down the building. The Collector sprays gasoline throughout the building and sets it on fire. After the Collector leaves, Arkin manages to open the cage by having Elena re-break his recently healing arm so that he can reach the latch. Soon the group escapes and finds an exit door to the building. Unfortunately, it is locked from the outside. The Collector stabs Paz to death and easily beats Arkin in a fistfight, since the latter has a broken arm. When Arkin and Elena are about to be killed by the Collector, Lucello appears, having survived his trap by using one of the dog's corpses. Although Lucello loses the fight with the Collector after being stabbed with a knife, he manages to hold the Collector. Subsequently, Arkin gets the upper hand and brutally beats the Collector before throwing his body into the elevator shaft with a pile of corpses covered in gasoline. Then he sets it on fire, burning the Collector to death. Soon, the fire set by the Collector catches every corner of the building. When Arkin becomes hopeless, Elena breaks the glass cases, causing the water to pour and extinguish fire in some places. The final 2 survivors, Elena and Arkin, are able to flee when the fire department breaks the door after hearing Elena scream. Outside, Elena meets her father and is relieved to see him. Later, Arkin discovers only the Collector's mask in the red trunk. Turns out the serial killer managed to escape and is still alive. After some time, Arkin locates the Collector's home by looking for every registered entomologist in the area. As Arkin points his gun at the Collector, he confronts him and threatens to torment him, just like he tortured Arkin. At the end of the movie, the Collector tries to revolt, but he is confined within his red trunk by Arkin, who slams the box shut while the Collector hopelessly clings to the edges.